I knew something was wrong when I walked into our apartment and saw my fiancé packing a suitcase with this eerie calmness, like he'd rehearsed this goodbye 100 times. His wedding ring was on the table, glinting under the kitchen light like it was mocking me. "Where are you going?" I asked, even though I already knew. He didn't look up. He just zipped the suitcase and said, "I can't do this anymore, Mia." That moment split my life in two. Before and after. And the worst part? I thought I was the one leaving him. Before I tell you what happened next, just make sure you're watching this alone. Because you're going to start questioning everything about love, trust, and whether we ever really know the person sleeping next to us. It started with the humming. Every night, around 2 a.m., I'd hear this low, tuneless hum, almost like someone trying to self-soothe in the dark. At first, I thought it was coming from outside, maybe the neighbors. But then I realized it was coming from the other side of our bed. Daniel. He'd sit up while I slept and just hum. No music, no words, just this eerie rhythm that made my skin crawl. I didn't say anything at first. I thought maybe it was stress. The wedding was 4 months away, and both of us were juggling work, finances, families with opinions louder than reason. But after the third night, I woke up to find him watching me. Not just lying there. Sitting up, completely still, staring at me like I was something he couldn't recognize. I whispered, "Babe, are you okay?" He blinked, slow, like he'd just come out of a trance. "Yeah. Just thinking." It should have been a red flag. But I loved him. Or maybe I just loved the idea of him, this man who'd known me since I was 21, who had seen all the messy versions of me and stayed. But now, something had shifted. He started getting weird about my sleep schedule. He'd ask what time I was going to bed, how long I planned to sleep, if I was taking anything to help me rest. At first, I thought it was sweet, like he cared about my health. But it felt off. Like he wanted control over when I closed my eyes. I started pretending to fall asleep, just to see what he'd do. And that's when I saw it. Daniel would lean over me, just inches from my face, and whisper things. Not sweet things. Things like, "You don't even know what you've done." And, "You think you're better than me now." It was like he was talking to a version of me that only existed in his head. I'd lie there, holding my breath, hoping he'd stop. But he'd keep going. Some nights, he'd stand up, walk to the foot of the bed, and just stare. Like he was deciding something. And still, I stayed. Because love makes you stupid. Or loyal. Or both. I convinced myself it was wedding stress. That once we got past the chaos, he'd go back to being my Daniel. The man who brought me coffee every morning and kissed the back of my neck like it was sacred. But instead, he got more distant during the day and more intense at night. I asked him about therapy. He laughed in my face. "You think I'm crazy now," he said. "Because I'm not the one who started pulling away first." That stopped me cold. Because I had pulled back. A little. After I got the promotion at work, I'd been spending more time with new clients, sometimes grabbing drinks after hours. Daniel had supported my career in theory, but not in practice. Every missed dinner turned into a passive-aggressive silence. Every text I didn't answer immediately became an accusation. And then came the lock. One night, I came home late and found the door locked from the inside. We never used the deadbolt. Ever. I had to knock, and when he opened the door, he didn't look surprised. "You weren't answering your phone," he said. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Because I was driving. He didn't move to let me in. Just stood there, blocking the doorway. "Were you alone?" I brushed past him without answering. That night, he didn't sleep next to me. He stayed on the couch, humming. I started waking up to find my phone moved. Notifications cleared. Tabs closed. I changed my passcode. The next day, he didn't even pretend not to notice. "You think you can hide from me?" he said, dead serious. "Daniel, I'm not hiding anything," I snapped. "I just want a little privacy." He smiled then. A slow, dead smile. People who want privacy usually have something to hide. That's when I knew. This wasn't stress. It wasn't wedding nerves. It was something darker. Something I didn't want to believe was real. But the truth was, I didn't know the man I was about to marry. Not anymore. The breaking point came a week later. I found the journal. It was hidden under the bed in a shoebox, behind a stack of old receipts. At first, I thought it was one of mine. I used to keep notebooks around for ideas, dreams, late-night thoughts. But when I opened it, my blood turned to ice. It wasn't mine. It was Daniel's. And it was all about me. Every page was filled with observations, written in this tight, obsessive handwriting. Things like, "She didn't kiss me goodnight again. Day 7. She wore the red blouse, means she's seeing someone at work. She laughed during her sleep. Who is she dreaming about?" It got worse. The last pages were fantasies. Not romantic ones, controlling ones. He'd written scripts of conversations that never happened. Arguments he'd won. Apologies I never gave. And one final note, in all caps. "She doesn't get to leave. Not this time." I felt my hands go numb. I snapped the book shut and ran to the bathroom to breathe. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. I looked terrified. Exhausted. Paranoid. Exactly how he wanted me. That night, I packed a bag and told myself I'd stay with my sister just for a few days. Just until things calmed down. But Daniel didn't let me leave. He stood in the doorway, holding my journal, the one I hadn't seen in weeks. "I think we need to talk," he said, calm and cold. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just set the bag down and nodded. Because in that moment, I knew something he didn't. I was done being afraid. But I wasn't done with the story. Not yet. I should have left that night. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run, to grab that bag and get as far from Daniel as possible. But when he stepped into the doorway holding my journal, something in me froze. "You wrote in it," he said quietly. "About how you wanted space. About how I was different." I nodded slowly, heart pounding. Because I needed to understand what was happening to us. He smiled, but not kindly. "There is no us if you see me like that." I told him I was just going to my sister's. That I needed a break, not a breakup. And then I said something I regret even now. "I just think we both need time." That word, time, unlocked something in him. His jaw clenched. His eyes darkened. "You mean you need time to decide if I'm worth staying with?" Silence. That was exactly what I meant, and he knew it. But instead of arguing, he stepped aside. "Go ahead," he whispered. "But don't come back unless you're sure." It sounded like a choice. But it wasn't. I stayed. I don't know why. Maybe it was guilt, or fear, or the pathetic hope that the man I loved still existed somewhere beneath the coldness. I unpacked my bag. Put it back in the closet. And started locking my bedroom door at night. That's when things got worse. Daniel stopped pretending to be normal. No more good morning kisses, no fake interest in my work, no more quiet dinners. He barely spoke to me during the day. But at night, I'd hear him. Outside the door. Breathing. Just standing there. Sometimes he'd try the knob. Just a light rattle. Like he was checking. The first time it happened, I told myself I imagined it. That I was being paranoid. But the second time, I crept toward the door and looked through the peephole. There he was. staring straight ahead. Not moving. Not blinking. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. I started keeping a chair under the handle. I set up a camera in the room and hid it in a plant, just to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. The footage was worse than I expected. Night after night, Daniel would come to the door between 2 and 3 a.m. He'd stand there for several minutes. Then he'd whisper things. Not loud enough for the camera to pick up, but I could see his lips moving. I confronted him. "What are you doing outside my room at night?" I asked, trying to sound steady. He looked at me like I was crazy. "You mean the room we used to share?" "That doesn't answer the question." He gave a sad little shrug. "I guess I just miss you." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But then I watched the next video. This time, he'd brought something with him. My necklace. It was one I hadn't worn in weeks, tucked away in a box in my drawer. In the video, Daniel held it in his hands like it was sacred. Then he knelt by the door. Just knelt. For 9 minutes. I knew I needed to get out, but I was too tired. Too broken. Every day I told myself I'd leave tomorrow. Just one more night. But tomorrow never came. Not until the night I woke up to find my door open. I always checked it twice. Locked it. Shoved the chair under the handle. And yet, there it was. Wide open. The chair pushed aside like it weighed nothing. And Daniel? Gone. I ran to the living room. Empty. Kitchen. Empty. His car wasn't in the driveway. I stood in the silence, heart racing, trying to convince myself it was an accident. Maybe I forgot to lock it. Maybe I imagined the chair. Maybe. Then I saw my phone. Placed neatly on the couch. Face up. Still recording. I didn't remember turning it on. I didn't remember placing it there. Hands shaking, I pressed stop. The video had been running for 23 minutes. I played it back. For the first few seconds, nothing. Then the sound of my bedroom door creaking. Daniel. Stepping into the room. The screen was dark, but I could hear him walking closer. His breathing. Then, his voice. So soft it felt like a breeze across the mic. I wonder if she dreams of him. A pause. She still smells like the one from last time. Then silence. Then the sound of my closet door opening. And staying open. I stopped the video. I didn't want to hear the rest. I packed a bag right then, threw everything I could into it, and left barefoot. I drove to my sister's house across town and slept on her couch for the first time in years. I told her everything. Showed her the videos. She wanted to call the cops. I told her not yet. I didn't want to ruin Daniel's life. I wanted answers. Why was he doing this? What had I done to make him believe I deserved it? That was the sick part, I still thought I owed him something. I stayed with her for a week. During that time, I blocked his number, set up two-factor authentication on all my accounts, even bought a new phone. I felt safer. Stronger. Until I started getting the letters. Handwritten. No return address. Just slipped under the door at night, even though we lived in a secured building. The first one read. I miss watching you sleep. You're so quiet now. Like you finally understand. The second one said. You can lock your doors, change your number, move across the country. But I'll still know when you dream of him. My sister found me in the bathtub that night, fully dressed, crying into a towel. I couldn't explain it. It was like he'd reached into my brain and infected every part of it. I couldn't eat. Couldn't function. Couldn't breathe without imagining him in the shadows. We went to the police. They took my statement. Opened a report. Said they'd look into it. But without physical proof that he was delivering the letters himself, they couldn't do much. My sister got me a therapist. She said I had PTSD. I didn't disagree. I tried to rebuild my life. Slowly. Carefully. I got a new apartment. New job. New routine. 4 months, nothing happened. No messages. No notes. No Daniel. And then, one morning, I walked into my kitchen and found my journal, yes, the one he'd been holding that night, sitting on the counter. Open to a fresh page. 6 words. You left the door unlocked again. And underneath it, a Polaroid. Of me. Sleeping. From the foot of the bed. I don't remember screaming. I just remember the sound of glass shattering as I threw the coffee mug across the room. He'd been in my apartment. He'd been inches from me. Again. This wasn't obsession. It wasn't heartbreak. It was possession. Daniel believed I was his. And now I knew, he didn't want me back. He wanted to erase me. After the journal showed up on my counter, everything changed. I stopped sleeping. Stopped eating. I kept the lights on all night, curtains closed during the day. I barely left my apartment, terrified that Daniel was watching, waiting. Every noise became him. Every shadow, every creak, every stranger on the street. My therapist said I was spiraling into hypervigilance. But I wasn't paranoid. Because 2 days later, I got another Polaroid. This one showed me brushing my teeth. From the hallway. There was no angle in my apartment that could have captured that shot, unless someone had been inside. Again. And still, the locks weren't broken. I checked every inch of the place. Under sinks. Inside cabinets. I tapped on the walls, pulled apart my vents. I bought a signal scanner and swept for hidden cameras. I called the police again. They came, looked around, wrote a report, and left. No forced entry, no prints, no evidence. No help. I changed my locks again. Got an alarm system. Slept with a knife beside me, which felt both ridiculous and necessary. I quit my job without notice. I couldn't focus. Every time I tried to sit through a meeting, I'd hear his voice in my head. Not yelling. Whispering. You left me once. Never again. My sister begged me to move in with her. I didn't want to bring this to her doorstep. So, I decided to disappear. I broke my lease. Got a burner phone. Paid a friend in cash to drive me 8 hours away to a cabin up north that her uncle used for hunting trips. No neighbors. No cell service. No noise. Just trees. I spent the first week crying and writing and trying to feel human again. I didn't have the internet. Just books, notebooks, and silence. I slept during the day, stayed up at night. I felt like prey. Then one night, around 3 a.m., I heard it. A knock. 3 slow knocks on the back window. I froze. There was no reason anyone should be there. I crawled to the window on my stomach, barely breathing. Peered through a sliver in the curtain. No one. But when I stepped out in the morning to look around, I found something wedged into the firewood pile. A note. Folded in half. Thought I lost you. That was it. I ran inside and threw up. Shaking so badly I couldn't stand. He had found me. Somehow, he had followed me here, no phone, no GPS, no address. He had still found me. I didn't stay. I left the cabin that same hour, didn't even pack everything. I took what I could, drove to the nearest town, and walked into the sheriff's office with the note in my hand and tears in my eyes. They didn't do much. But they saw how scared I was. They let me stay in the back office while I figured out where to go. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to keep running. I was going to end this. Not with violence. But with the one thing Daniel didn't expect. A trap. I posted a photo to my old Instagram account. Just a blurred picture of a coffee mug and a book. Nothing obvious. But I tagged the city. A place I hadn't been in years. A place he would think I'd never go. Then I waited. Checked into a cheap motel under a fake name. Used a prepaid phone. Spent 2 nights checking the hallway every 15 minutes, scanning every car in the parking lot. And on the 3rd night, I saw him. He walked right past the motel office. No disguise. No hesitation. He went room by room. Like he knew I was there. But I wasn't. I watched him from across the street, from the car I borrowed from a friend, with the engine running and 911 on speed dial. I recorded the whole thing. When the police came, I handed them everything. The videos. The notes. The photos. The journal. It wasn't enough for stalking charges. But it was enough for a restraining order. And this time, I made sure it stuck. I went public. Quietly. I spoke to a lawyer, then to a reporter I trusted. I didn't name Daniel, but I told my story. Anonymously, but truthfully. The article went viral. Dozens of women messaged me. Some with stories just like mine. A few who had dated Daniel. A few who said he'd followed them, too. Eventually, his employer caught wind. He was suspended. Then fired. I heard through someone that he left town shortly after. That he was staying with some family in Arizona. I don't know if that's true. And I don't care. Because now, I live under a new name. In a city where no one knows my face. I work remotely, stay off social media, and never ever post photos with location tags. It's not a perfect life. But it's a free one. Sometimes, I still wake up in a sweat, thinking I heard humming. I keep a baseball bat next to my bed. I double-check every door, every window. But mostly, I sleep. Deep, dreamless sleep. I'm rebuilding, day by day. And I'm learning that survival isn't always loud or brave or cinematic. Sometimes it's just getting through the morning. But every time I feel that old fear creeping back in, I remind myself. I got away. I chose to live. And he will never own a piece of me again.